30 years, 3 decades, and roughly one generation. A lot can happen in such a time, and a lot can change. The world, technology, and people. When it comes to Sonic the Hedgehog, the Blue Blur himself, as well as his series, are in their 32nd year, longer than many of his fans have been alive, long enough to create a fluid, evolving legacy. Sonic, as a character and as a franchise, has seen change both within the world and technology, from cultural impact to the number of consoles he's been on. From the core games to music, art, animation, writing, the impact on people both professionally and personally is hard to deny. Sonic as a series also has undergone quite a bit of change, however. The first game, there were 6 Chaos Emeralds rather than 7, and they went from giving life to flowers and restoring nature to empowering the hedgehog to be more powerful than ever before, once the 7th entered the story. This is the flower bed, which seeds the change seen within the series. Some other changes that are more external are those within the timeline, such as Origins, where it's stated that Sonic CD chronologically came before Sonic 2 within the canon. While Sonic 2 came first in real life, Sonic CD was the fastest thing alive's second foray against Eggman. And 30 years ago, in real life, fans and newcomers alike were introduced to two major players within the series, both tied to the Hedgehog in some way. One was Metal Sonic, the cold, mechanical double of the Hedgehog, his equal and opposite, while the other was Amy Rose, a fan of Sonic's, who would grow to become something more. Personally, I can't help but remark how fitting it is for Amy Rose to debut in the game where Flowers powered Eggman's robots. Flowers, like all life forms, take time and care in order to flourish. In the early games, Amy was still fairly new. She was a girl with a penchant for fortune telling, who wound up coming to Never Lake in Little Planet for a destined encounter. In a sense, this foretelling came to pass, with her meeting Sonic, and immediately being smitten with him. Sonic didn't reciprocate her affections, but he did save her when she was kidnapped by his mechanical match, Metal Sonic. After both Amy and Little Planet were saved, Amy's infatuation with Sonic was set, and it became a trait that lingered within her character. According to the stated timeline, this made Amy the first of Sonic's longtime friends in the games, and the first long-standing proof of how his efforts affect his world. It's at this point I do want to take a little time to talk about some of the criticisms often against Amy, namely that she's just obsessed with Sonic and that she tends to be captured. This does happen in Adventure, CD, and Adventure 2, and she does have an odd habit of mixing up other hedgehogs for Sonic, namely Shadow and Silver, who don't look anything like Sonic at all. One could argue on a meta level she sees something good in them that reminds her of Sonic, but I don't think that's actually true of why she just seems to have really poor eyesight. Nonetheless, these complaints are aside from the point, and often overshadow more strong, more nuanced points about this character that I want to highlight today. Aside from Tails, one could argue that Amy is one of the people who idolizes Sonic the most, and grounds his free spirit in concerns and situations within the world. Both Amy and Tails learn from and are inspired by Sonic, and each of them take different lessons from their encounters with him. For Tails, he learns to be more self-confident and sure of himself, in most cases, whereas with Amy, she more strongly embodies the idea of helping others and doing unto them as was done unto her. This highlights the point of relationships to her, not just romantic, but also friendly, and in the idea of love itself. Sonic Adventure is Amy's first foray into factoring into the plot, and the introduction to modern Sonic era. While Amy was playable in other games up until that point, it was the first time that she tangibly was part of the plot, and the first time to show her growth and agency in full. At the game's outset, she remarks how bored she is of everything, and how life has become monotonous. It makes her desire change, and that change comes in the form of Birdie the Flicky. The game then takes off with her and the Flicky as a duo, becoming fast friends as Amy decides to help it with its plight. This eventually leads to Amy's capture by E100, and her and the Birdie encountering Gamma. Despite being an enemy badnik, during her captivity, Amy has time to make a conversation with Gamma, rather than just writing him off as a mindless robot. When he says that her caring for Birdie is illogical, she expresses that taking care of others is natural. As she had only just met Birdie not long ago, she committed to helping the Flicky, which reflects the speed at which Amy bonds with others. She goes on to state that she pities Gamma for not understanding love. The way she expresses this isn't to mock Gamma, but rather out of genuine sadness. She feels as though he's missing out on one of the best things in life. After this statement, Birdie approaches Gamma, and the robot has a chance to fulfill its function. But one can speculate that a mix of Amy's words and Birdie's connection to the Flicky within Gamma had an effect. In either case, Amy's actions do lead to Gamma further developing and eventually rejecting Eggman's programming. Her good turn leads Gamma to free her, and she later on repays this turn. During a conflict not long after, Amy goes out of her way to defend Gamma from Sonic and Tails when the three are caught into a fight. Considering her crush on Sonic and her appreciation for him saving her in the past, this marks a moment of agency and how she is dedicated to the idea of love and not just Sonic himself. She encourages Gamma to be free afterwards and tells him that they're friends. After noting that Birdie also wants Gamma to be free, she expresses that she hopes that they'll meet again. In an odd way, this does come to pass, with the Flicky within Gamma rejoining her, after her words and influence, along with other factors, leads Gamma to helping to free the Flickies and other animals within. After Gamma destroys Beta and is destroyed himself, the Flickies within turn out to be Birdie's lost family, and in a roundabout way, Amy's earlier actions with Gamma help to reunite the Flicky with its family in more ways than she just expected. However, this is brought to a halt when E100, who had been pursuing her up till that time, attacked Birdie. It also marked the moment that, when a friend of Amy's was in danger, she decided to step up and destroy the robot she had been running from up until that time. It was a moment where she finally stood on her own, where she previously wanted to lean on Sonic for help, but decided it was time to take things into her own hands. And it marked a major change in her character. This ties nicely to how she was helpful to both Gamma and to the Birdie. Her different kinds of care shown set a pattern that would be followed up on in later games, namely Sonic Adventure 2. In a roundabout way, Amy's ideas on love and connection to others winds up freeing both Gamma and the Flickies. While indirect, her impact leads to both direct conflict against E100 and a major moment of growth for her as a character. Up until then, all of gameplay had been consumed with her running away from E100, but then, when the Flicky is hurt, she finally decides to stand up for herself and destroys the Eggman robot. When Amy finally defeated E100, it marked a major turning point for her character. Earlier in the game, she had tried to get Sonic to take care of Birdie rather than do it herself. But as she spent more time with the robot and went through more of the adventure by herself, she became determined to be more capable, and she finally was able to do so. It marked a major departure from her depiction in the classic era, and was the start of a trend that would come later. It was a moment where Amy finally started to grow, and her character would only grow further during the time of Sonic Adventure 2. What we as an audience learn in Adventure 1, the game cements that Amy's care for others isn't limited to Sonic alone. Whereas her ties to him are primarily romantic, the sense of empathy and care she has for others leads to her budding theme as the heart of Team Sonic. This is shown with her interactions with both Gamma and Birdie. It also sets the stage for recurring elements within the game: freedom from imprisonment and a heart-to-heart, which reappear within Sonic Adventure 2. Sonic Adventure 2, while lacking a playable moment for Amy outside the versus mode of battle, does give more key insights to her character. It shows how she's grown and how she manages to connect with others. One moment worth noting is her ability to make it to Prison Island where Sonic is being held by Gun. She does this under her own power, even though she's later saved by Tails. And she's the one who also goes out of her way to save Sonic from his prison cell. This, along with her intuition and pure heart, are noted within the game's own instruction booklet, making a few more interesting notes for Amy herself as we go. The way that Amy frees Sonic from his cell on Prison Island is a big moment for her. It marks how far she's come since Sonic CD, and she returns the favor to him, as he had done for her. This does lead to a moment where she is once again rescued, however, towards the later end of the game, and Sonic does come through. But Amy does manage to make up for it by talking to Shadow and being the one to reach out to him. Even after everything that's transpired, both Team Sonic and Team Dark are willing to work together to stop the Bile Lizard. However, Shadow is the one holdout, and Amy is the one to reach him. She's key in talking Shadow into helping, dragging him out of his nihilism when he's given in to despair and his desire for revenge. She knows that while people are flawed and selfish, she believes they're basically good if they do their best and don't give up on their wishes. Her words are a call to action to Shadow, both in the moment and internally, and a reminder of one of the few good people in his life, Maria. Earlier in the story, Shadow was the one to save Rouge, both due to their growing friendship and wanting to avoid the trauma of losing someone when he could help, as opposed to being helpless when it came time to save Maria. Amy pleads for him to make a choice, and she imparts the lesson that she was taught in the past about how saving people is good, and how all one needs to do is to give them a chance. This call and care echoes the call that Maria gave to him. Connection from one life to another, even in different moments, carries the same weight and the same strength. Shadow's last words to Amy in that moment of confusion were about how he had to keep his promise, both to Maria and to her. From there, Shadow would go on to help save the Earth and remain an ally to Sonic and the team, even if he wasn't always friendly to everybody. In a later entry, one that Sonic fans often wilt at the mention of, Amy Rose would continue the trend of turning enemies into allies. While erased from the timeline and often ignored by fans, Sonic the Hedgehog 2006, also known as Sonic '06, repeats patterns we've seen in previous games. The new Hedgehog, Silver, arrives in the past after the plot is kicked into motion, and Amy is the first person to befriend Silver in the present. When she does, after a brief conversation, she instantly offers to help him rather than chase down Sonic as she had been doing prior. Despite this, she does also pull Silver into helping her find him, but at the same time, the two of them become more friendly. After a while, though, this is put to a test when Silver and Sonic face off, with Silver tricked into thinking that Sonic will cause the apocalypse. After the battle, as Silver is about to kill Sonic, Amy intervenes and is willing to put her life on the line for Sonic, just as she had for Gamma some time ago. This divide doesn't turn Amy against Silver, though, and just like before, she takes time to talk to what would be a perceived enemy. She remains resolute in her care for Sonic, going so far as to say that if she had to choose between the world and Sonic, she'd pick Sonic before she departs. This causes Silver to question his mission, and even rethink whether or not it's okay to kill someone for the greater good. Silver does eventually come around, but Amy at least makes him reconsider the cost of what he's doing. Silver wants a future where others can be happy, and is conceptually willing to make a sacrifice of another. But the reality of what a life is and the love it can hold is shown to him. To kill Sonic would be to inflict pain akin to the suffering in the time he came from, and Silver has no guarantees that killing Sonic would change his future. One final note on '06 I want to bring up is a quote from Amy to Elise, one I think shows well her worldview and how she's grown as a character. Amy states that love changes everything. Feels like every little moment in your life is huge. Explains her dedication to Sonic across the game entries, but more than that, it's why she's determined to spread love to others. Even if it isn't always a romantic sort, the idea of love organically reaches its apex when Sonic as a franchise ventures into a new frontier. In Frontiers, much time is taken to talk about the history of the series and explore characters with more depth and nuance. While some take issue with this, I personally adore the effort that went into it, as well as the care for the series as a whole. It also leads to a chance to reflect on how the series has progressed since its start. This is true of its characters too. Amy is the first of Sonic's friends to be saved after all of the heart-shaped memory tokens are collected. From there, she's separated from Sonic by being trapped in the cyberspace. Her first concern was if Sonic was okay though, and even after that, her next concern was whether or not Tails was fine, putting others before herself as usual. The memory tokens, and the fact that they are heart-shaped, are a good sign of how deeply the concept of love is embedded into her character. That aside, though, one could also look at the Pico Pico hammer and the heart trail that it leaves behind. That's usually a pretty good hint. But her focus on the Starfall Islands is on helping the Coco, the mysterious new characters in the game, even though she fully doesn't understand them. The idea of helping a Coco who has yet to express its love for another takes precedence, even as Sonic subtly notes that they have more pressing issues at hand. However, Amy's care for others also extends to helping a mother Coco who lost her children. Eventually, the two are successful in their endeavors, helping both the family and the lost lovers, and they uncover more knowledge about the nature of the Coco as a whole. During all of this, Sonic notes Amy's knack for weird insights. Whether or not this is Sonic not understanding deeper interpersonal ties, a note of Amy's own ability to connect with others, or some combination thereof, it further grounds the theme of her character. There's a brief moment when Sonic, worried that they're too distracted by helping the Coco, wonders about leaving them, but Amy reacts with shock that Sonic might leave someone in need behind. That, given how she met Sonic and his actions throughout the series, is core to what she admires about him when he came to her in her time of need. He clarifies that he's more worried about her well being, but in the end, the two are in agreement and continue to help the Coco. This also shows that Sonic's care for Amy is more than just a simple tag along. She is truly one of his friends, as has been demonstrated in past games too. Additionally, there's a moment where she briefly defends Sonic's character from Sage, while the new character briefly opines on the nature of love and dismisses it. Amy doesn't play a major role in Sage's change, but that concept of love does eventually embed itself in her through her interactions with Eggman and coming to believe in Sonic as well. More directly for Amy, however, is where the root of her character takes place. This game takes great pains to show Amy and Sonic's dynamic in a new light. Rather than trying for his romantic attention, there's a more mature air to how they talk. Sonic, while still being brash and cavalier in his attitude, expresses care for Amy's digitized state and asks how she's doing multiple times. When she speaks back to him, she's more calm and composed. A sense that Amy has grown up in some way is seen here, as her desire for a relationship with Sonic isn't her primary drive anymore. Sonic also expresses a respect for her toughness and drive. It's later among a field of flowers that Amy and Sonic have their heart to heart. After witnessing the final act of the Coco they had been minding, and their ancient counterparts' final acts in life, Amy has pondered more about life. She mentions to Sonic that she saw love that transcended time, and her desire to share that love with the world, even if it takes her and Sonic far apart. Sonic encourages her, and is more than happy to hear about it when she returns from her proposed trip. In a world like Sonic's, where nature and industrialization are put in contrast, one can argue conflict and love are too. Earlier in Frontiers, Amy mentions a recovering field that has little but underbrush, much like areas Eggman ravaged in the past are slowly recovering. The environmental subtheme of Sonic aside, this also parallels the idea of love and conflict. Eggman's conflict led to Birdie's family being separated, and Gamma's creation and his form of conflict with Beta. It also led to Gun's murder of Maria and the pain Gerald Robotnik and Shadow felt, as well as Silver being willing to engage in conflict to prevent a threat, and aware of the pain that that would bring too. As nature takes time to recover after being destroyed, a wounded heart takes time and care to heal, and be willing to be there for others. Amy's bond with Sonic befits her name. A rose that grows is an expression of that love. But later, there is a wish to spread that sentiment to others, as she has matured over the course of the adventures she's had. The same way she spreads care to Birdie and Gamma, to Shadow and Silver, that desire to spread love, make a difference, marks to me what makes Amy truly stand out. As I wrap this up, I do want to give credit to others who made insights I did not, and that I think are worth mentioning. Specifically the TJ Show for pointing out Blaze and Amy's momentary interaction in Sonic Rush. Amy is among many characters who try to encourage Blaze to work with others, particularly Sonic. She notes that sometimes people can't do things alone, and Amy's words are noted by Blaze to show her open nature. Similarly, I want to thank Digi Valentine for pointing out that Amy being an older sister figure to Cream in Heroes is a key moment in her character that also shows her care. He also mentions how Amy adds to the idea of Sonic as a celebrity in the world, given her being a fan of his. I'd also like to circle back to the criticism of Amy as being obsessed with Sonic. Again, there is merit to that argument, but it falls under the same brand of flanderization that other characters undergo. Very often, a character is boiled down to their least flattering moments, which has led to certain characters only being seen in their worst light. Examples I'd like to shout out would be Knuckles being seen as gullible and unintelligent, as opposed to isolated and trusting, if a little stubborn, as well as Tails lacking in confidence and depending on Sonic too much, rather than his moments of individual heroism, how his own skills save the day, and Sonic from time to time. Lastly, though, there's also Shadow, whose moments of brooding and arrogance are dialed up for needless antagonism, or lead to people seeing him as, unfortunately, the Vegeta clone. In the case of Shadow the Hedgehog specifically, I do want to point out that love and friendship are actually key to his character. Everything he did in Sonic Adventure 2 was because of the love he had for both Maria and Gerald Robotnik. And he did make friends in the form of both Omega and Rouge, something that he maintains even in Shadow the Hedgehog, which many point out as the low point for his character. It shows that oftentimes the key moments or the moments that people like to hyperfixate on aren't all that a character is. As I said before, this series is one that does embody chaos. It's ever changing, and part of why the fan base is so divided at times, but it's something that lets it be something for everybody as well. Even if an era isn't exactly your thing, you can find a thing to love in it, and hopefully it'll be carried over into future entries as time passes. It's fairly easy to point out inconsistencies in the series and moments where characters fail and fumble. It's a thing that we all wish to see gone, and while it pays to bear them in mind for future criticism, defining characters by only their worst moments robs them of the chance to develop, and of their impact throughout the series, both in story and to the fans. It's almost impossible to deny Sonic's friends and rivals are just as loved and celebrated as he is, and those developments in the present have led to Amy's growth in the game's classic continuity as well. Much of the care and affection fans have for modern Amy has made its way back to her classic counterpart, where she was previously a side character before Adventures or relegated to spin off games. She is now acknowledged as a full member of Team Sonic, even in classic continuity. The desire for people to experience her character more has led to her inclusion in Origins Plus as well. While this holds no narrative weight, it's a nice way to reflect the place she has across the series and in fans' hearts, even going so far as to give her super form, like the other characters have, and showing her capability. As of time of recording, Sonic Superstars has yet to release, but it goes far to carry over characterization from later games, especially on her bio notes in Sonic Superstars. The bio states that Amy is still learning to use her own surprising strength, a pink hedgehog who wields her huge Pico Pico hammer. She has a strong sense of justice and will always follow her heart to protect the weak, even though that often means putting herself in danger. This reflects moments that come later, such as with the Flicky or with Sonic when he's hurt, as well as her desire to do right, even in the face of an idea such as the apocalypse. These traits, while native to her modern interpretation, also show that classic and modern are more connected by the core of their characters than one would think. Even though it's been 30 years, the growth that Amy has gotten is still seen within these games. Her design may be back to where it was, but people's care for this character and what she means within the series has grown since then. Finally, it seems like Amy Rose is getting her flowers. It took a little time for her to blossom, and love for this character to bloom, but in the end, it seems to have happened for Amy Rose. Before I close out, I want to say thank you for listening along. Video essays aren't my usual thing, but I wanted to try my hand at it. Given it's been 30 years since Sonic CD came out, and the recent news with Amy, I felt like it was a good time to do a retrospective on her character. And that wouldn't have been possible without a couple of friends of mine. I want to shout out Cactus and Bricks, who is doing the audio mixing for this. Without him, I would have been hopelessly lost so far as trying to get this all down. And I also want to thank my friend Rose, who did the cover image for this. Both of you have done me a great favor, and I really do appreciate it. Everyone, I hope that you're well after this, and if things go well, you'll hear me again. Till then, please take care of yourself during these hard times. Try to find some sunshine wherever you can.